I have I have pressed on both of my boys the power of faith in God. And when you find yourself troubled or not knowing where to go or not being able to find the answer, you have to be able to turn in a direction that it took me a little longer. I was always there, but it took me a little longer to actually trust the process to the level that it is today. And my youngest is so interesting because so many times he's still teaching. They're both teaching me, but he is teaching me where when you're away, I felt like the most important thing I could teach him as I drove home, which I tell the story of this podcast all the time. I was a mess. Like I had convinced my wife it was a great idea. I trusted him it was a great idea. And I'm the entrepreneur, like, yeah, we can make it work. We'll trust God, we'll trust the process. And I'm driving home and I'm a wreck. And I'm like, did I do the right thing? So by the time I got home, I had hired an agent, a real estate agent, to buy a condo up there. And I was like, I got to be closer. I'm going to go back and forth. We're going to figure it out. But number one thing when I came back and I sat in quiet and just prayed and thought about it was, Scott, you know the way. The way is teach him that there's nothing that mom and dad are going to that we're going to not be right by his side. So who needs to be by his side every day? God. So how can I do this? So, I have the Hallow app, which I absolutely love, and I downloaded it for the family, and my son uses it, and
That's so beautiful.
he started doing the Bible in a year. He goes to mass and Ubers to mass on a Saturday night or a Sunday by himself, and to the point where my brother and I'm telling my brother's like, there's no reason for me to miss now. I have two kids. I'm tired, but there's no reason I'm going. Like he's setting an example for all of us. And so I say that because it's really
Wow,
not just,
that's so
isn't that
powerful.
powerful? It's so, and but it's teaching me, it's reinforcing in me. Like we are not just because we know it doesn't mean we always do the right thing. So,
No.
that's the other thing I like to make sure my sons know that, hey, you're doing some things I wasn't doing. You're taking it a
Yeah.
step above, and I'm so proud of that watching it. But I also know they're good. When they moved away, and as we're the ones that struggle more, like when they start leaving and you have all this empty space, it's definitely a challenge. But that's why I lean more into the podcast. That's why we're doing more traveling with them. And so,
That's really, you should be so, honestly, of everything anyone's told me, that is up there in the handful of things that is truly impressive because to equip your kids with that is everything, especially in a generation where everything's online and feels very void of that. And what I really am trying to say to you is that that would not have happened unless you truly had faith. Because kids don't do what you say; they only do what you've actually done. And my husband in the Jewish faith, we wrap tefillin, which is actually they're actually these boxes. One's on your head, one's on your arm. It actually is pieces of Genesis. It's like parchment, the scroll, and then you say all these prayers, right, where you kind of testify to God that he built this world and what you're, put in this world for. And my kids have seen him do that prayer every single morning. So my daughter, before we go to sleep at night, if we don't say our prayers, she goes, Mom, we got to pray. And it's not because we told her to do that. It's because we do it ourselves.
yeah, you're modeling it.
You have to do that, right? And it's really easy for parents to get all hot and bothered over what's going on with their kids. It's what you've shown. And if what's happening in the house is really a beautiful connection with God, it doesn't even matter what's happening outside the house because the kids will be so filled from that. They will stay, right, connected to their path, right? My grandmother always lived a block away. And even though my parents went through all of this, I look back and I'm like, oh, well, I had a grandmother who had faith. And I had a grandmother who just whispered that into my ears all the time. And whether or not my parents thought that was, enough to get in there, it planted a seed in me. And she was extremely resourceful and came to this country with the worst of circumstances and used to draw a line up the back of her leg to make it look like she had stocking because she couldn't even afford 5 cents for stockings. And she used to always say to me in Yiddish, but she would translate it like, have compassion for people because you don't know what they woke up with today.
Yeah.
And by doing that, she always said to me, I'm a millionaire. She wasn't a millionaire, but she used to say, I'm so rich because look what I have. And if we went to the checkout line at the grocery store, my grandmother would say to the woman checking us out, have you had a hug today? Has anyone hugged you? And people would look at her like, are you crazy? And then they would realize she meant it. And then she would give them a hug. And if we saw a couple of times, we saw like a stray animal, my grandmother would take it home. And so I learned a lot just from watching her be who she was, right? That's what I learned from. And also from watching someone who had gone through just the worst, having gone through World War II and having lost family to the worst horrors and to still have faith and to still love people. That's enough to, change your whole life. So
That's
I
amazing.
yeah, I've never thought, and I think a lot of kids of immigrants feel this way. I never thought, oh, well, these are my circumstances. It was always like, okay, but look what America provides. Look what you can do. And my grandmother used to cry on the 4th of July. I mean, I could cry just thinking about that, like how
Yeah.
much she loved this country, how much she was so proud of being here. So I feel that way, So like I always felt like we're the luckiest people in the world. Look where we get to be. Look at the opportunities available to us, right? And so all of that is what made me, turn out to be who I am, right? And so the fact that you can say that about your 14-year-old son, that's wild.
Yeah, I can tell you what's most impressive, and I know we have to wrap up as well, but what's most impressive is he called to tell me a couple of weeks ago that he went to the academy director and the coach and asked if it would be okay if they prayed as a team prior to games. And so, as the captain of the team, as a leader of men, and he goes and now every game they huddle up. They had an awful tournament as a team. They had an awful tournament, but I don't like this last tournament I was down in and at the Generation Adidas Cup in Florida. They play individuals played well, but as a team they did not play well. I don't care because at the end of the day, what they're doing is building a more powerful resource for the future. And what he's doing is taking it a step further. What I love about your story is that your grandmother planted a seed. And what's beautiful about a seed is that it can grow into something
Yeah.
substantially greater. And what you've done and what your impact has been is maybe on the same scale, equal to, in some ways, the hug that your grandmother would provide the lady at the register or whatever. But it's a much more amplified message today. And that seed started with that. And the last point I'll make is I gave all four of my grandparents eulogies. And my grandfather died at like 95 years old. He was a devout, faithful, faithful man. Like to the point where we opened his top drawer after he had gone, and I was like, "That's where you're like, oh, if we're gonna find any bad stuff, this will be where it's at." And there's just a Bible and like Pope John Paul II book and like medals. He's just an amazing man. And when I did the eulogy, I looked at all my cousins who are out there, and so many of them have given up faith or backed away from their faith or have lost themselves. And I just said, I always want us to remember that you can't have the life, the family. Look at all the people that are in this room. You can't have all of that without remembering what it was built on. And his faith is what built
So
this
beautiful.
entire idea of
Yep.
this family. And I'm so grateful for it. And as the oldest grandson, that's what I felt like my calling was, to make sure I reminded them that that I need to remind myself.
I wanted to show you. So at the back of my book, there is a essay, and it says "Letters from the Jetty" by Dr. Phil Heller, and that's my dad. And the very first line, it says, "The ocean invites the soul to its sanctuary every day. In prayer, I thank God for the blessings bestowed on me." And he goes it's all about God. And the reason why this is in the back of my book, something my father wrote, get this. So it's the week of hospice, okay, in July. My dad's dying. And that is the exact same week Simon and Schuster wanted me to turn in the book with the final edit. I was not allowed to touch it after July 5th. Listen to this. So it's July 3rd. My dad passes away. I've been in that hospice room for days. I find in his top drawer of his desk a letter he wrote about God. I call Simon and Schuster. I go, could you put this please in the back of my book? Could you publish this essay? Please. I can't believe I just found this. And they said, you know what? This is the last day we can make changes. We're putting it in there. So my dad's words, which are all about beginning your day talking to God, are in this book. It's the final note in this book. And I'm telling you, that is not a coincidence. And I was blown away that I found that on his top drawer, right? That he left that with us. He left that message with us. And you want to hear something wild? It's crazy. So my last name is Heller. That's my dad. My husband and I have different last names because I was already in the industry and I had a career. And anyway, I kept my last name. So my dad says to me on his deathbed, I wish I could leave you a house. I want to leave you my home. I want to leave you my home. Long story short, my stepmom sells the house that they had. My sister and I were devastated. And I said, you know what? Just watch how dad's going to figure out a way. There'll be something that happens. So my husband and I start thinking about moving to Florida. We've been in LA for 23 years. We start thinking about moving the kids to Florida, which is where I grew up. And we put an offer on a house. And I said, if God wills it, it'll be. Let's write it for less than they're asking to see what they come back with. Okay, we write an offer. They come back the next morning accepting the offer. So I said to the agent, you know, they didn't even counter. They didn't even ask for like 50 grand more or 200 grand more. We came in 400 under asking. The woman, get this, she says, the family who lives there, they felt it was a sign because their last name is Heller. And they feel like this is your house.
Oh
And I'm
my
like,
gosh.
I go, are you kidding me now? So we buy the house because this is the Heller's house, right? They're the only people who've owned it. And I didn't know that they lived there. I don't know who lived there. I'm writing an offer. I found the house on Zillow, right?
Right.
Move into the house. We redid it. We were just there over Passover and Easter. And the first morning I'm sitting in the kitchen and it's beautiful. We redid it. Da da da. There's this red cardinal that comes and sits down next to me. And then he comes every day and she builds a little nest and she starts feeding her little red cardinals. And it's so beautiful. And I've grown up in Florida, so I've seen iguanas, but I've never seen a red cardinal in my life that close up. So I go to ChatGPT, I go, what does a red cardinal signify? And it said a red cardinal is a sign that somebody who passed is visiting. It set up a nest literally next to me. I go, Dad, I get it.
I get
You're
it.
here. You got me. This is the Heller's house. You told me on your deathbed you want to leave me a house. You left me a house. May it be for blessing. And you know, he was always so worried about us in LA. He's like, I don't know, there's a lot going on there. I get really worried. And I want you to come back. I want you to come back. I got to find a way for you to come back. You know, he could never have left us this big of a house, right? My dad didn't own a big house like that. I have 3 children. It is so wild how when you are available, God will show up wherever you allow him in.
If you like clips like this, I have a similar clip here. And if you want to watch the full video, click here.